Hi, welcome back to another episode of 5 Minutes with Jesus and Jesse. We are continuing on with my testimony, and I hate to tell you guys this, but today is kind of a sad one. So just bear with me, and if you know me, you know that I am just a crier, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. So, all right, my pregnancy with Crew was pretty easy. I felt myself just start praying more regularly, like for a healthy pregnancy, that my child would know God, as I was pregnant. So I feel like this drawing back to God really didn't happen until I was pregnant. When Crew was 5 days old, we received a phone call from our doctor saying that we needed to come in for some additional blood work. Obviously, that's not a phone call that you ever want to receive. So I immediately was in a state of panic. This is my first child. I mean, I had no clue what was going on. And the only thing that I knew that I could do in this situation was to pray and to trust God. And so I feel like through this was when I started praying more regularly. We ended up getting a congenital hypothyroidism diagnosis for Crew. And this is a fairly common thing. I'm sure you can probably start naming people off the top of your head that have thyroid issues or take medication for it. But for a child, it's a little bit different. And if you Google and read all the worst case scenarios, which of course I did in my sleep deprived state as a newborn mother, you become very scared and very unsure of what the diagnosis is actually going to be. You see, a child has to have these hormones for brain development, for growth, and your mind starts wandering to the worst case scenarios, which are listed on Google as well. Permanent intellectual disabilities, all the way to dwarfism, obesity, you name it. And I remember holding my newborn baby, trying to give him medication in our kitchen. This is like one of those memories that just like never leave your brain. And I was crying my eyes out thinking, why me? Why did this happen to me? And I remember people also telling me that my baby, like, oh, look at your perfect baby. And I was like, no, he's not perfect. He has something wrong with him. And I felt overwhelmed. I felt helpless. I felt scared. And Derek and I both went through all of these emotions together. This is really when, though, I started just like praying and crying out to the Lord. We took our perfect little baby, which he is perfect because God doesn't make mistakes. We took him to get his blood drawn every 6 weeks as we were supposed to. And so that was a whole event in itself, holding your 6-week, month and a half, 3-month-old baby down as they shove needles in his arms trying to get blood out of an infant's vein, which is next to impossible. So, this whole thing is stressful and just overwhelming. We got into a routine. We figured it out. We started giving him his medication without any issues. Everything, was fine. But we chose as parents to keep his diagnosis to ourselves because we didn't know all the answers, and the thought of somebody asking us or them Googling themselves and seeing all of this stuff was not going to do us any good. So we kept it to ourselves for years, actually. Not a single person knew for years that Crew had this. We literally just had his medication, and if he stayed the night somewhere, we're just like, hey, give him his, I think we called it allergy medicine or something. Like, no one was the wiser. It was fine. Slowly but surely, our fears subsided and our perspective turned into thankfulness. There is a world of things that could go wrong with a child. And really, to me now, it's a miracle every time a child is born and they're deemed normal. Last week, actually, we attended the funeral of our friend's 6-year-old daughter. And I can't tell you how many times since Crew has had this diagnosis up until like today that I am thankful that he has hypothyroidism and he doesn't have fill in the blank. Every day got easier. And I feel like at this point in my faith walk, I was just pretty content with my faith. Like I was praying somewhat regularly. I was trying to read my Bible and not really having any direction or knowing what I was supposed to be doing. You know, I really at this point was wanting to do the right things, but feel like I so many times chose the wrong choice still. I was still, you know, drinking, I was still cussing, I was still, you know, living a life that didn't look like a Christian. But there was this seed in my heart that was, you know, starting to grow. We got pregnant with our second child, and I went in around 8 weeks to have an ultrasound done, and I knew immediately that something was wrong. They didn't find a heartbeat, and we lost our second child. And I was devastated. I mean, a miscarriage at any point ever is just absolutely gut-wrenching. And if you've never experienced this, I am so glad to hear that. Like, genuinely, I'm so happy that you've never had to do that. Because it's not something that I would wish on anyone. And there's this quote that I love from Yellowstone that I actually sent to my friend who just experienced this, unfortunately, the other day. And it said, it was a part of her, so she lost a part of herself. And that truly is, you know, to me, how I felt. I lost a part of myself. And we were fortunate enough to get pregnant with a third time with Griffin. And it wasn't until I had delivered him that I was like holding him in my arms that I remembered what day it was. It was May 12th. It was exactly 1 year to the date that we miscarried. You know, there are going to be moments in your life that you can undeniably attribute to God. And that was one of those moments for me that as I'm holding a perfect newborn baby, I remembered it was a year, exactly to the day, a year that we lost our second child. You know, a year anniversary of one of my greatest losses. I got to experience one of my greatest joys. Whew, I'm gonna get it together. Through my children, I have witnessed God's faithfulness. And the most important thing that I can do as a parent is to make sure that they know Him.